To me, Global Reach Out is inspiring.
It's connecting with God, reaching out to the world, and impacting life.
The stories that shared is so personal and it deeply impacted me.
Global Reach Out to me is reach out to the truth.
Connecting hearts, connecting lives. You're listening to Global Reach Out.
Welcome everyone to episode 5 of a biblical response to practical issues in life. And today we will talk about the issue of our tongue. A story is told about 4 worship team members who went for a retreat. One evening, they decided to tell each other their biggest sins. The guitarist said, "Well, it's kind of embarrassing, but my big sin is that I never pray at all." "My sin is worse," said the pianist. "It's gambling. One Saturday, instead of going for my practice, I went to the racetrack to bet on horses." "Mine is worse still," said the vocalist. "I prefer to sing secular songs over worship songs." And then finally, the drummer. But he was quiet, and then suddenly he started running. The other 3 stopped him and said, "We will not leave you until you tell us your big sin." And then the drummer said, "I should have confessed first, because my sin is gossiping, and I cannot stop until I tell about you guys to the entire church." Words have power. The words that come out of our mouth are more powerful than we can ever imagine. Proverbs 18:21 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue, meaning the words that our tongue utter can either bring about life or death to people. In other words, words can either make you or break you. Perhaps some of you might be right in the middle of a trouble with someone because of the words spoken by you. Or perhaps you have witnessed someone getting in trouble for what they said. Words have the power to make you who you are and how you are. Let's be honest here. Some of you have become insecure, timid, negative, skeptic, suspicious, or prejudiced because of the words spoken to you, about you, or around you by somebody, whether at home, in school, at your workplace, or in social media. Their words influenced and impacted in who you are and how you are today. In the same vein, for some of you, you have become a better person, a friend, a better worker, a better husband, wife, leader, a better Christian because of the words spoken to you or about you by someone. So this tells me that words can either cause trouble or transformation. Brian Bill is right when he said that words can either express or repress, adore or abhor, offend or befriend, affirm or alienate, build or belittle, comfort or criticize, delight or destroy others. This is why we need to guard our tongue. And in today's text, James chapter 3 verses 1 to 12, James tells us why we need to guard our tongue. From this passage, it seems quite clear that James understood the severity of what our tongue can do to each other. Now remember, he was writing to the churches or believers who were going through tremendous trials and challenges. And here is something to take note. When things are not going well in life, our tongue, if not careful and if not guarded, it can make our life and others even more miserable. Our tongue is put to the extreme test when we are under trial or under pressure. That's right. The tongue becomes most vulnerable when we are under pressure. And so in today's passage, James cared to talk about in length the severity of our tongue. In this passage, we can see at least 3 things about our tongue, which is a good reason for us to understand again why we should constantly guard our tongue, especially when we are under pressure. Question: what are the 3 things about our tongue? First, our tongue is accountable. This is what James said in verse 1 of chapter 3. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. Take note, James said, not many of you should become teachers. This tells me that there were many people during his time who wanted to become teachers of God's word. Question: why would they want to become teachers? Well, for several reasons. For example, during that time, teachers were highly regarded and respected. They had immense influence and power over the course of people's life. And obviously, some of them were abusing the position of a teacher for their own ulterior motives. So, James is probably addressing to believers who desire to become teachers, motivated by those teachers who are leveraging on their position for their own agenda. And James gives them the reason why they should not become teachers with such ulterior motives. Here is the reason. Because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. In other words, you will be held accountable for what you teach, for what you say as a teacher. In principle, that applies to every one of us. For all of us are teachers in one way or another. But more so, because the matter of issue here is the use of our tongue. And all of us have a tongue. All of us can speak or communicate with our tongue through our words. So in application, James is saying that we are all accountable for what we say. We will be judged by our words. And that is exactly what Jesus said as well in Matthew chapter 12 verse 37. Jesus said, by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Question: where will you stand today based on how you have been using your tongue? Will you stand more on the side of being justified, or will you stand more on the side of being condemned because of how you have been using your tongue, because of the choice of words you use in relating with your family, friends, or colleagues? Our tongue is accountable. That's the first thing about our tongue. The second is this: our tongue is powerful. This is what James said in chapter 3, verse 2. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. Let me put James' point in another way. This is basically what he is saying. If you can keep your teeny tiny tongue in control, you can pretty much keep your big body in control as well. That's the power of our tongue. And James illustrates that from verses 3 to 6. This is what he said: when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a whirl of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. James illustrates by mentioning the bits in the mouth of a horse, the rudder of a ship, and the spark of fire. Question: what do these three things have in common? That's right. They are all very small parts that has the power to control immensely big objects. So here is James' point. Just as these tiny parts have great power to control over the entire big objects, likewise, our tiny tongue has the power to control over our entire body. So if you feel that you are losing control over certain areas in your life, and you wish to determine the direction of those areas in your life, then you need to learn to take control of your tongue. Because James said, you control your tongue, you control your entire life. But well, it's easier said than done. And that is why James said in verse 7 and verse 8, all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. This reminds me of the Genesis account. God made mankind and gave him the power to control and tame all kinds of animals. Today, man still can tame animals. You have seen animals in circus that are tamed. Birds, reptiles, elephants, lions, all kinds of animals. But the teeny tiny tongue, James said, no mankind can tame. Why? Because it is a restless evil, which means our tongue is unsettled or unstable. And that is why it makes us want to pick up our phones and tweet before we think. That is why it makes us want to comment before we gather the context. It makes us want to speak behind our colleagues or friends, or even right in their face. That is why it makes us want to speak harshly to our children, parents, spouse, and loved ones. And consequently, it breaks relationships, friendships, marriages, families, societies, and even nations. That is the dangerous power of our tongue. Our tongue is accountable. Our tongue is powerful. And finally, our tongue is inconsistent. In the next episode, I will talk about the third thing about our tongue and wrap up with 3 applications for our reflection and action. So do continue to stay safe and stay tuned. God bless.
The program is proudly presented by Global Reach Out. We welcome you to share our live enriching webcasts with family and friends through our website, global-reachout.org. Let's reach out to bless more lives together.